I still think about what happened to Dan. I only knew him for a week, but I wish I'd done more. I've been bartending at this restaurant for just that week. It was usually very quiet with not many customers coming in. It was far away from the city, in a bit of a secluded area within a school campus. Most of the customers were kids from the school and their parents. Dan was a server there, and I found myself watching him a lot while I worked behind the bar. He had the worst case of acne I'd ever seen. One of my other co-workers, Jess, and I made plenty of remarks on it, calling him Ferrero Rocher and pepperoni pizza. I found some of them pretty funny at the time, but I quickly realized that Dan was very lonely, and he probably saw and heard the way people talked about him. He hid his face behind this surgical mask, and he never talked with anybody. The surgical mask only made him look scarier. I mean, that's what the kids said. Now, I wish I hadn't taken part in a lot of those jokes. The first time I saw him, I can't say I wasn't shocked by his appearance. Endless pores of all different sizes, red like blood. Honestly, it was very unpleasant, especially for the people eating. So I sort of understood the disgusted looks many of the kids and parents would give him. The day I met him, he walked past me and I said good morning. He only looked at me and kept walking. Didn't say anything, so I did think he was a little bit of a dick. But I try to be a kind person, never judging someone too quickly, so I had another shot with him. I was also feeling a little bad for him once I'd heard all the jokes and comments. I saw Dan eating outside on the sidewalk when we had a lunch break. I decided to try to talk to him. I just wanted to be nice. I remember perfectly that I told him my name and asked how long he'd been working here. He didn't even look at me. I could tell he was kind of hiding his face. It was very awkward. There was a bit of a silence. I mean, I thought, what do I say now? I even thought he might be mute or deaf or something. I thought to myself, well, you tried, I guess fuck him then. Which was a bit harsh, but I did find him rude. The rest of the week I'd be paying a lot of attention to him since I didn't have much to do and I was all alone behind the bar. On the off chance that we did have a group of parents or something eating there and he'd actually have to come out and show himself, I never knew how to feel. I could always notice how people reacted to him, seeing his face for a split second before outright avoiding looking at him anymore. I always wondered to myself how he felt. I tried getting a closer look at him, but his eyes they seemed distant, as if he was living on autopilot, completely void of any emotion. This is where I think it all went a little too far for him. One day there was this pair of sisters at the restaurant, and they sat very near to where I was. I could overhear their conversation. Dan came in to take their order, and just as they saw him, they immediately looked away, and I could tell that, this happened a lot. So I was very used to seeing this, but they just didn't look at him, and they barely talked. And it's like if they were with a monster or something. But I just thought, if I'm used to it, then Dan was probably more than used to it. When they made their order and Dan went away, I heard one of them tell the other one that the waiter was so ugly or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Some time passed and they kept talking about how nasty he looked, and when he came back and brought their eggs, the older sister told the younger one that she shouldn't eat it, and the younger one said that it was so disgusting and they didn't want those eggs anymore. And it was, I found that really harsh. And the sisters, they just left the bill. They told me they paid and they left. I remember I saw those eggs just there, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what Dan was gonna think when he saw them. So I asked Jess if she could help me put them away, but she told me that was not her job, that was Dan's job, and I wasn't allowed to go into the kitchen. She just told me, no, go bring some Cokes to some parents or something, and I just left them there. I found it really shocking. I mean, maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have. I waited for Dan to come pick up the plates, and as soon as I saw him, I felt really bad. I mean, I could tell he noticed them from like the moment he stepped out the door. He walked so slowly towards them. I mean, that was the first time that I saw like this this feeling in his eyes. Like, you know, he knew exactly what the girls thought. You know, for just a second, he looked toward me, and I looked away. I didn't want him to think that I was making fun of the situation or something. I was a bit embarrassed, you know. Now I didn't see him until the next day, and that next day I didn't recognize him. None of us did. That was the first time I think all of us had seen him without his mask. The swelling had basically disappeared. For the first time, I could see what he really looked like. He still barely spoke, but everybody noticed. Nobody said a word. I think we were all just so shocked and genuinely felt a little glad for him. Actually, very glad. Jess looked at me when I saw him. She looked at me like she was very impressed. At some point later, she even told me he wasn't bad looking. That entire day, he carried himself differently. I mean, for the first time, I saw him looking people in the eye. I couldn't help but, you know, feel happy for him, but something did feel a little off. Throughout that day, I saw him head to the bathroom multiple times. By around midday, I'd counted 4 times. By that evening, I'd lost count. Before this, I'd see him go in about once a day. Most days, he never even went to the bathroom. I found it strange, but I assumed it was just like a stomach flu or something embarrassing like that. One thing I do distinctly remember noticing was that every time he came out of the bathroom, his face looked shinier than the last time. It wasn't like his face was glowing, but it had this creamy, bright look. At that moment, I thought he was just moisturizing. This Friday evening, we had a larger crowd than usual. It was one of the parents' birthdays, and he had invited a ton of the other school parents and kids to celebrate after school. They'd been around for most of the afternoon, but it peaked at around 6. Dan had a busy day, but he was smiling, being much more pleasant than usual, and I'd actually heard him talk more than just "what would you like" in his monotone voice. The night continued until the worst possible outcome happened. I'll never forget this moment. I hate just thinking about it. He was attending a girl around his age. I'd never seen him smile like that. They exchanged looks as he took her order, big bright eyes on both their faces. It was like one of the best sights you've ever seen. Suddenly I heard a plate crack. I looked back up and saw the girl having both her hands on her face. The whole restaurant looked toward them. At that moment, the whole world seemed as if it moved in slow motion. I looked up at Dan. Both his hands were on his face. There was something in his hands. It was gooey and bright green with red. And then he started screaming. It was this loud shriek. The whole restaurant was in shock. I was in so much shock. The girl started crying. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, but I thought he surely needed some help. So I went to the kitchen behind him. You know, I wanted to see how he was doing. I didn't know what the hell happened. And I saw him crouched on the floor looking for something through his bag. His back was towards me, and I asked him if he was okay, and he only kept saying no repeatedly in panic, in so much panic. He dropped something on the floor, and it was this small plastic bottle. And then he just immediately turned around and ran towards me out the door. I still have this like image of him, like a photograph in my mind of him. There's so much terror in his eyes. His skin was like burnt. It looked as if it had burnt it. There was burn marks around where his momentarily perfect skin had been. He ran past me and straight out the restaurant. I told the others we should go help him, but everybody was so deep in shock. I made my way out, but he drove away before I could get to him. I walked back in. The whole restaurant was getting ready to leave. Families were consoling the girl who had seen Dan up close. I was picking up the broken plate, unable to process what had just happened. I thought of the bottle he had dropped, so I went back in, and it was still laying on the floor, and along with his other things. I grabbed it and I read this label. It was called the Eternal Cleanse, and it was basically empty, the bottle, but the substance inside was soapy looking and almost neon green. I figured, that was probably what he had been applying to his face all day. I turned the bottle around, and that's when I realized there was this huge warning sign on the back of the bottle, and below it read, "Apply only once per day," in big, bold, capital letters. And that was the last time I saw Dan.